I kind of chose the running back position just because the tradition of 1,000-yard rushers over the last 10, 15, 20 years at Oregon, and I knew it was going to be really fun to talk about a lot of these electric playmakers over the years. Here is Ryan's top 5. Number 1, LaMichael James. Number 2, Kenjon Barner. You got number 3, Jonathan Stewart. Ducks of a feather going back to back there. Number 4, Royce Freeman, and number 5, Bucky Irving. Mine was almost a mirror image, but I do have a flip-flop in here. I've got James and Barner 1 and 2, just like Ryan. I've got Royce Freeman, the leading rusher in Oregon history, sitting there in the number 3 spot. I've got Jonathan Stewart there at number 4. Bucky Irving, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons at Oregon after transferring from Minnesota. LaMichael James, of course, is at the top. These 3 seasons. 2009, 1,546, 14 scores. Of course, 2010, that national championship runner-up season. 1,731 yards, 21 touchdowns, third in the Heisman voting. 2011, 1,805 and 18 touchdowns. So 2010, you look at 3 games, over 200 yards on the ground in October 30th matchup, 36 carries, 239 yards, 3 touchdowns. I believe that was against USC. I didn't write down the opponents here. 2011, 4 games, over 200 yards rushing. Is there a game or a moment that sticks out in your head when you think of LaMichael James at Oregon?
LaMichael James. You know, the run I always like with LaMichael is the one down at Tennessee. On the sideline. Yep. LaMichael is again an incredible person, such a great dude, and really funny, really a funny dude. Like God, man, his energy is awesome. He's one. If you're out here, maybe you could be able to swing by his Killer Burger and meet him because he's there at the ready. The thing I love about LaMichael is that it was always kind of like, I mean, he treated the game very seriously, don't get me wrong, but he always just felt like he was just having fun. Yeah. And you know, I think that people kind of used his size and his weight against him when he went to the next level, but I still think that I don't know why he didn't get a better look in the NFL. It was, I guess it is just the timing wasn't right or whatever, but he is an absolute amazing running back. He can do it all. He's a guy who would himself probably not say that he should be on the number 1 on the list. He's a guy who probably would say Jonathan Stewart should be number 1.
Sure. Yeah, and then you look at the rest of this list. You mentioned, like Kenjon Barner and Jonathan Stewart had, I think, 1,700-yard seasons, 1,800-yard seasons, certainly respectively as well. I believe Jonathan Stewart, his big season was the 2007 season, of course. Royce Freeman. You know, here's what I want to say about Royce. I think when you talk about maybe some of the best Ducks of all time, like when people say running backs, they're probably going to think of LaMichael James and Kenjon Barner and Jay Stu and some of these guys. But Royce Freeman, when all was said and done, the leading rusher in Oregon history, a little bit of a bigger, more powerful back. How do you kind of handicap Royce Freeman and his running style maybe compared to some of these other guys of the James, of the Barners, DeAnthony Thomas? I know he was kind of a hybrid certainly as well, but some of these smaller, speedier guys compared with maybe a little bit of a power running style.
Yeah, Royce was just a bell cow. I mean, he played all 4 years. He ran the ball all the time during his era. He rarely got hurt. He was a 3-down back. You know, he just answered the bell every single time you needed him to. I think Jonathan Stewart's probably. I always tell Ruben Drones whenever I see him, I think that Ruben, while he was healthy, was probably the best running back they ever had. Yeah. But it was between the injuries, right? But I think Jonathan Stewart's probably the best of them all. Big picture, going to the NFL, having a great career in the NFL, had a great career at Oregon. I mean, this is a guy who was an absolute stud coming out of high school. You know, this was kind of at the era, you know, before you have all the social media and everything on the internet. You know, he would have been an absolute sensation in the modern era where you have all the recruiting videos and everything. Oh my gosh, he was just unbelievable. Another great guy, super smart. I love Kenjon. I think Kenjon one of the best Duck ambassadors we can have. I'm so glad that they have him in the flock. Every time I see Kenjon, always feel like I'm talking to like an absolute superstar. I mean, the guy looks perfect at all times. I saw him at the Rose Bowl, right before the Rose Bowl. He's in a full suit. He's just doing the stuff from the Pac-12 or the Big Ten or whatever the heck thing it is. And I'm like, dude, look at you, man. I was like, how are you not completely busting out of the suit? He's like, oh, I'm sweating. But the guy looked perfect. I mean, just perfect. And his running style is amazing because he's so low to the ground. He's a guy who's a DB. He came in as a DB. And when they moved him over to running back, he just exploded. He wants contact. He likes to run through guys. Yeah, man, I think that it's fun to see LaMichael and Kenjon at the top of that list for you both and you and me, because they're kind of a package deal in my mind too. Both of them are like best friends. They had a great time here. They were one of the best duos you could have had. And then you add DeAnthony Thomas as the scat back with those two. I mean, how can that be any better?
We got to shout out to both. You mentioned Kenjon Barner and what he's doing with the Big Ten Network now, and shout out to him and Jay Stu for the great work that they're doing with Ducks of a Feather right now to benefit Oregon student athletes, and then their podcast certainly as well. I've been really a big listener to them, certainly, and what they're doing over there. Bucky Irving. Okay, so on my list, obviously that's recency. We're kind of looking at what Bucky was able to do, and I was maybe trying to find ways to not have a recency bias and maybe kind of take a look at some of these other guys, but I just always came back to Bucky Irving. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons on very successful Duck teams, very balanced Duck teams, I think as well, and I had to find a way to put Bucky certainly at that number 5 spot.
Also had a great year this year in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the breakout rookies from this class that he's in, an absolute born football player. The guy looks literally the part. If you were to say, what should a running back look like? One of the first moves when Coach Locke came in was to bring in both Bucky and Noah, and couldn't have asked for better guys to come into that room, ready to work on day one. We're the best running backs in the room. And it was just an amazing time to watch Bucky grow, because I think there's something to be said about the fact that Bucky could play all of those downs, never really lost any weight, came in at basically the same weight that he was when he left, just absolutely chiseled. Great guy, great individual, spoke very highly of his teammates, had a great time on the sideline. And Bucky is that dude, and he's built to be a professional. He's built for the NFL.
I was mulling over Jeremiah Johnson. He of course was behind Jonathan Stewart, and when he really got his opportunity to shine, I think his last year was 2008 if I'm not mistaken. 1,200 yards, double-digit touchdowns, 2 seasons with 10 plus touchdowns. He was kind of mixed in there. There was an era with LeGarrette Blount was also in there as well. I know you recently had an interaction with Jeremiah, giving his game-worn jersey back and all that. Speak to Jeremiah, because maybe he isn't maybe thought of as, we talk about these top 5 lists, but he's someone that I remember watching when Oregon really grabbed my attention. I really love to watch him run the football.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many running backs. I mean, you can keep going back. Terrence Whitehead. Sean Burwell. I mean, Ricky Whittle. They're just the list goes on and on and on. But yeah, no, Jeremiah Johnson was awesome. I got to give him his jersey. My aunt had picked up that jersey in some sort of an auction or whatever. It was the first jersey with the wings. The first time the Ducks had the wings. It was against Arizona in 2007, I think, or 2008. I think 2008. And yeah, dude, he was such a great player for the Ducks. His most memorable run to me was at Oregon State. The Beavs could have gone to the Rose Bowl 2 years in a row, and the Ducks beat them both years. And the second time, it was whoever won that game went to the Rose Bowl, and the Ducks went to the Rose Bowl because they won. But Jeremiah Johnson up there in Corvallis had this breakaway. I want to say it's like a 79-yard touchdown or something. And halfway through the run on the sideline, the ball pops out of his hands as he's running, regathers it on the way for the touchdown. But yeah, no, great guy, great individual, lives in Eugene, got a great family. And yeah, no, I was always wanted that jersey to go back to him. And when I asked him if he had much of his jerseys, because I expect some of these guys, they got a whole room full of their stuff.
Right.
And then he's like, no, I don't really have anything. And I was like, well, then I got something for you.
We got something for you, my man. Final thoughts, Ryan, as we wrap it up talking about the running backs.
Yeah, I mean, the running back position, like I said, I think, the bigger guys don't really get the same sort of love that the smaller guys do. So you get guys, like a Reuben Drones or like a LeGarrette Blount. LeGarrette's basically my size as a running back, hurdling people, dude. Yeah. I mean, he was an absolute freak. And then the other guys who I thought should be on this list somewhere, somehow, they're the tweeners between a wide receiver, between a running back is DeAnthony Thomas and Ahmad Rashad, two guys that can play both running back or wide receiver. And then I think DeAnthony Thomas is still probably the most important single recruit Oregon's ever got.
Yeah.
I think there's still guys here in 2024, 2025 who say they want to be the next DeAnthony Thomas. They're still watching highlights of DeAnthony. I mean, when I tell and see DeAnthony in person, I always say, thank you so much for coming here. You have no idea how important that was. Chip Kelly created a different role for him that kind of made him out to be something you can't really put him on any of these lists. So I just thought of like best players. Yeah. And Anthony Thomas is one of those guys who's just is still in the hearts and minds of a lot of Duck fans, probably one of the best players of all time. In Oregon history.
Run that sticks out to me, that long run against Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl for DeAnthony, if I'm not mistaken, our guy Nick Cody lifting him into the air during that Rose Bowl, that great game that went back and forth between the Badgers